I am about to leave for Tinley in like a few hours. So I am rushing this video. I am sorry. Well, skello there. My name is Brittany, and today I'm going to be showing you how I hang the heating and lighting in my screen top Dubia Enclosures. Now, this tutorial is going to work for anything that is a screen top enclosure that is like a thick, secure metal mesh. So it works great for my Dubia Enclosures. It would work for a Zen. This is not going to work for something like an Exoterra, which has like a thinner mesh top. Before we get started, if you like this kind of video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe for more content, and also if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. Let's get started. Now, when you're hanging heating and lighting inside an enclosure, it is really important to make sure that the heating and lighting is a safe distance from your animal. So enclosure size is really important. You are only going to want to do this in something that is 24 inches tall, and then possibly you can do this in something that's like 18 inches tall, as long as there is a good amount of distance between the apparatus and your animal. I highly suggest researching your specific animal and their needs. I would not use this in anything that is like a 12-inch enclosure, a 1 foot tall. I definitely would not hang any heating and lighting on the inside of the enclosure for those sizes. This technique is going to work for a variety of heating and lighting types. I do suggest researching the proper heating and lighting for your specific animal, especially when it comes to like UVB. There is specific ways and distances and angles that you should position it at. Those are things that I am honestly not that familiar with, so I'm not going to be talking about them in this video. So I do suggest researching those further if that is something you are planning on putting inside your enclosure. Safety tips: heating and lighting, no matter, even if it's just like an LED light, is going to get hot. And for PVC enclosures especially, any sort of heat can melt the enclosure. It could also burn your animal. So it's essential that when you are hanging the heating and lighting in an enclosure that it is regulated. I personally like to use dimmers. You can also use thermostats, and I also check it frequently with a heat gun. Because PVC can be melted with heat, it's also important that you keep the heating apparatus a safe distance from the PVC. So I will insert a video clip of how I kind of position mine in my Dubia enclosures. The other really important thing is to make sure that when you are securing the heating and lighting, you are making sure that it is secure so that the animal cannot actually crawl into the heating source or the lighting source, and that they can't crawl under it, get stuck, anything like that. So you want to make sure that you have it really, really secure when you install it. As I mentioned, there is a lot of different types of heating and lighting that you can use. If you use something like a radiant heat panel, it is going to come with holes pre-drilled in it so that you can use this technique. For overhead heating, I suggest getting a cage fixture. Now, there are a few different options available. The most common one you'll see is like the Arcadia cage fixture, which I will put a photo of. I also have it in my Amazon down below. That one works great. It's the easiest to find. However, you do have to do a little bit of like electrician work if you are taking apart like a dome fixture. And if you guys want to see that, I can probably make a short on it. So what I suggest getting instead is a cage like this that has the ceramic fixture built in already. Now, it's essential that this is ceramic and not metal or plastic. Metal is going to get really hot, and plastic obviously can melt and start a fire. I get this from a website called Reptiles, but please don't share that with everyone because I love these and I don't need everyone buying them, okay? That being said, I will link the product again in the description bar below. Not a sponsor or anything. These are my favorite. You can get these on Amazon as well, but if you read the reviews, they freak me out. I personally have never gotten one on there. I don't have one that I'm going to recommend. I would just say be super careful with any sort of heating and lighting that you purchase. It's also really important that if you get one of these, it fits your bulb. So always check the diameter as well as the wattage to make sure that it can support the bulb that you're trying to put in it before buying it. My biggest issue with those cage fixtures with the ceramic piece in it already was that there wasn't really a good way for me to regulate it because, as I mentioned, I like using dimmers. So I also purchased this from Reptiles, and I will put some more in my Amazon link below. Basically, it is just like a dimmer switch that I just plug the apparatus into, and then I use this like a dimmer. Again, make sure it's the right wattage, make sure you're monitoring it, make sure it's not, there's not a gap when you put this in there. Basically, just anytime heating and lighting is involved, ask yourself, am I being paranoid enough? And if you think the answer is no, be more paranoid and just check it. It's terrible advice. I don't know, guys. So now how to actually put these in your enclosure. Now, like I mentioned, we want to make sure that the heating and lighting apparatus is safely distanced from any PVC panels. Even if it's a wood enclosure, which has a higher heat tolerance, I still make sure that it can't touch it. The other thing that's really important is because we're going to be mounting this to the screen top directly, that if you stack your enclosures like I have back here and there's just a small gap, one, you want to make sure that it's not going to be able to melt the enclosure above it. So I do actually put foil on top of mine just so that the heat reflects down instead of up, and that there's proper airflow between the two enclosures so that, again, you're not melting the one above it. When I first started reptile keeping, I thought I had done all the research in the world and I was so prepared. But heating and lighting is just one of those things nobody can properly prepare you for. So this is my method of doing this. I'm sure there are other methods. I'm not going to say this is 100% the best method, 100% the safest method. Just make sure that however you're doing it, you are being safe, monitoring it, checking it, regulating it, all of those things. And if you guys have a better solution, definitely let me know in the comments below. But my solution is so simple. And basically all you're going to need is some metal craft wire. Some optional supplies are going to be little tiny pliers just to help you with it. And you can also get metal washers, which I haven't decided if I like using these yet or not. One final precaution that I forgot to mention is that heating and lighting, because it gets hot, if it gets water on it, it can shatter, which again can be dangerous. So be very careful doing this on any sort of enclosure that is very high humidity or that you mist frequently, and just make sure that you're being really careful when you're doing that.
I do suggest taking the screen lid off or doing this before you assemble the enclosure. I also suggest getting someone to help you so you don't have to figure out a mount like I did here with my camera tripod. Once you have that securely mounted to the screen, basically all we're going to do is we're going to take that metal floral wire. It could be craft wire, picture hanging wire, basically any thin metal wire, and we are just going to pull it up through the metal mesh and just make it super tight. And we're going to do this a bunch of times. The more times you do it, the better, just because the metal wire, it's thin so it can break. It is really important that you do this with metal wire. Things like plastic or zip ties can melt, and that is going to be extremely dangerous. So basically the method is to just go back and forth with the metal wire a million times, make a million knots, and just make sure that it's super secure against the mesh. I do the same thing for all apparatuses. This is an example of my radiant heat panel, and then here is me mounting a UVB strip light. They come with these little metal things that you just kind of have to force on there. What I like to do is I just like to take the metal wire and kind of loop it in through that before actually forcing it on there, tying a bunch of knots, making sure it's really secure, and then mounting it to the mesh just like I did with the heat cage. Now here's an example of how I used the washer. So this method makes more sense to me just because the washer will distribute the surface area and the weight a little bit better and not cause any potential rips in the mesh. But so far I haven't noticed a major difference, so I haven't been using the washer, but I did just want to show you guys an example of how I used it. You will also notice that I used the wire to secure the cord just so that the animal can't get under it, climb on it, potentially pull the heating apparatus down. And I just think that's a really good tip to make sure that it's secure. Now in this, you'll notice that I also looped it into the frame and not just the holes made for the mounting. And I did that just to make sure that it's super secure against the screen and nothing can get in there. Now, if you haven't seen my reptile room, definitely go check out my reptile room tour video, but this is basically what the heating and lighting looks like.
And that's it, guys. Super simple. It's definitely something that I overcomplicated for a very long time. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, again, make sure to hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and let me know what other kind of content you guys want to see. Check me out on all my other social media. You know, basically the whole end card that nobody is watching. Thank you guys so much for staying this long. I will see you guys in a week.